Welcome back, everybody. We're live here at Adobe Live with Paige Tingey.
Hello.
We're gonna do day 2 of some photo retouching using Lightroom and her Lightroom magic skills. Before we go into it, I just want to go over some housekeeping items. So let's have a look at the schedule. We'll see what just happened before us, what's going on now, and what's to come. So we just had Claudia do the Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge. I believe she's getting into the 36 days of type theme that's going on right now. Right now we are live with Paige and myself doing some photo retouching. Then after this, we'll have the XD Daily Creative Challenge with my man Jesse Showalter. And then to close us off for the day, we'll have logo design with Claudia and Christine Arth. Just to give you guys a heads up, we are gonna have a chat and win 30 minutes into the show, like we always do. And then after that, we'll do some design feedback. So if we hop on over to my screen, let's go over here. Cool. So for those of you who don't know, the Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge is going on right now, as it always is. And right now we are doing the brushes challenge. So the challenge is to create an illustrated text using brushes, shapes, and textures. So Claudia just demonstrated how she did that, and now it's up to you all to decide how to do the challenge and submit it on Discord so Paige and I can give you some feedback on that. Cool. Let's do a super quick intro on Paige. Paige, let us know who you are, what you do, what type of stuff you shoot with your camera, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I mostly do landscape photography. I travel quite a bit, well, as much as I can on my weekends, and spend a lot of time going around California. There's a lot of places to see. Try to get out of the country if I can, or just around the US. But yeah, I focus a lot on the landscape side of things. I'm obsessed with editing, obviously, why I'm here today. I used to be an artist, and so I feel like the way I edit is a little bit more like art to me, rather than just editing. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. So this is some of her work. She's great using the brushes and just making any landscape pop. I personally think her work is super awesome, and we're actually going to get another sneak peek into how this all plays out. So let's hop on over to Paige's screen and get right into it.
Awesome. All right, so I'm actually going to use a little bit more Photoshop today than I did yesterday, if anyone saw what was going on then. So I'll start out just doing my typical Lightroom flow on this photo, and then we'll jump over into Photoshop.
Cool. So we got to let people know how you got this shot. So I feel like this is such a cool story.
Oh my gosh.
You look at the shot and you think it's a drone shot. Did you hike up to get it? But it's actually a pretty cool way how you got the shot.
Yeah, so what you don't see in this image is there's actually like a carnival setting like right behind where this church is. So there's like a Ferris wheel and like all of these rides and stuff like that. It's like almost like a little theme park thing. And the only way that you can get this shot is there's this ride that has this like bucket that you can sit in, and it lifts you all the way up. And you're up for like a minute, and then it takes you back down. So I get on there, and I'm like trying to guess which lens I want to use, and I have a lens on there, and I go up to the very top, and I'm like trying to take as many pictures as I can, and I get up there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to switch lenses. So I'm like switching lenses, and it was like a minute. I had like a minute to do all
You had a minute window to capture this, and
so
you snagged it, so it was great. Real quick, I just want to say hey to all our friends in the chat.
Oh yes, hello.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for joining us for day 2. Just want to give a shout out to Tim, Munir, Jean, Anna. We got Adobe Live, the one and only Gus Man, Michelle, Munir, I already said you twice, Eric, Andreas, Sean. Yes, feel free to say hi to the chat. Let us know where you're from. Go ahead and engage with us. This is going to be a really fun stream. Feel free to ask any questions. We're here to answer all the things that you might wonder photography related. So join the conversation. All right.
Yeah, and Jan, thank you. I thought it was genius as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not a drone shot because it's actually, I think it's illegal.
It's a drone shot.
Yeah, I think it's illegal to fly drones here. But it's a sunset to answer your question, Noor. So.
Yeah. Cool.
Great. All right, well, let's hop in. So, taking a look at this shot, the exposure was really nuts because anytime you're dealing with sunset, sunrise, again, I think I mentioned this yesterday, it's good to try to bracket, but when, this scenario, I just told you the story, I couldn't bracket really for this shot, and so there's the sky is super bright, the the foreground's really dark, and so instantly when I pull it into Lightroom, I start messing around with the lighting to try to even things out a little bit.
Yeah. And the really cool thing about just cameras these days and just the way that they're coming out is that they're getting so crazy with megapixels and dynamic range. So
Yep.
I honestly would not be surprised at some point in the near future if you can just take one shot and it's got all the dynamic range of what you would usually use bracketing for.
Nikon actually does, well, no, never mind. Nikon can do focus stacking, which is really cool.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I want to say that I'm hearing about cameras starting to try to come out with like bracketing for you. I know that there may even be applications that you can download onto your cameras that will bracket for you. So anyway, they are really good already, just like one image. And so if it can get to the point where the image size it would have to be like 100 megapixels.
Right. And I feel like we're going to see that with this photo. I mean, you see the shot now, and just with all the edits and changes that Paige does, I mean, you'll see it's going to come out like a really solid shot.
Yeah, so you can see how well it actually kept all of the information from the shadows.
Yeah, and Tim, that's a good point. This is a raw file, right?
Yeah.
So we wouldn't be able to pull all this information in if it wasn't a raw file. Alberto, what's up? Good to see you. I think my fellow Florida man lives in Florida. We're both from Florida.
Oh, that's where you're from? I didn't even know.
Cool.
Very cool. All right, so I can now finally see what I'm dealing with. I can see the sky. I can see the foreground. I'm going to leave it like that for now. And let's go to my colors. I do start with calibration typically. Drawing my hues down a little bit. That's changing you can see how drastic the change is. And so I'm just going to go probably only about 20 or so here.
Yeah, and we touched up a little bit on this yesterday, but when using these sliders, it's always, if you don't know where to start or you're intimidated by these sliders, a good practice to kind of get a feel on what they do is just bring it to the extreme, whether that's to the right or to the left, see what it's actually doing to the photo, and then slowly sliding it back so you can kind of fine tune how much is just what you want.
Yeah, definitely. And it's because doing it in a slow way shows your eye like you'll kind of lock in right at the spot that you're like, okay, that's perfect.
Yeah.
So let yourself eyeball it a little bit.
For sure.
Fantastic. Okay, so that's all I'm gonna do there, but now I'm gonna go up to my other colors with my hues. The oranges are a little bit strong, so I'm going to lighten them up a little bit. With that, yellows are going to affect quite a bit on this as well. I don't really want to mess with it though yet. And then the greens, I want to keep them a little bit more bluish. Sometimes I see a lot, like it's really a popular style right now in editing to change everything to orange, which I also do sometimes.
We have a question
for this
in
one, I
the
want to
chat
keep
real quick.
it a little bit higher.
Sorry to interrupt.
You're
We
good.
have a question. Anna's actually asking, what camera
camera?
do you shoot with?
Yeah, so I'm shooting with a Sony a7R II right now.
Yeah. So that's a great camera for photography. So
Yes.
Sony has an
absolutely.
alpha line, and they usually have something like a A7S2 or an A7R2. Now I think they're up to like the AR4 or AR3.
Yeah, the AR4 is really crazy. It has like it has like an eye focus that works on animals, which is nuts.
That's insane. That's great for
It's insane that even
bird
exists.
photography. But yeah, typically with the Sony line, usually the photo or the cameras that have the R next to them, they're, I would say, catered more towards photography because they have the megapixels.
Yes,
And you get
like landscape
crazy
photography, you
resolution.
mean?
Yeah, so I know a lot of landscape photographers that use the Sony bodies, specifically the R ones, because you just get that resolution. If you're more in the video world, then I'd say like the S line is really into your world because they focus more on the internal codecs and all the capabilities that come in the body. And they're also crazy in low light. Like anything Sony, the
Yeah.
low light sensitivity in those cameras and just their alpha ecosystem is nuts.
Yeah, it's really, really great. So, the other thing though is it again we talked about this yesterday, but Sony doesn't have amazing color in my opinion.
The color
So
science.
you can see that I've already had to adjust a little bit on the color end because I don't typically like the way the color just comes out when I put it into my like when I export the photo and put it into Lightroom. So I definitely touch up colors quite a bit. I don't necessarily like saturate them. I just adjust them so that I feel like they look a little bit better.
Yeah. Nora has a great question, and I think a good thing to touch up on is, does high resolution matter? Like, is it, when you're purchasing a camera, do you need to sort of pixel peep and look for a body that has the biggest megapixels?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It really depends on what you want to shoot.
Yeah.
For me, it matters a lot because I want to be able to blow up my images to be, 4 feet tall if I want.
Yeah.
And this type of camera will be able to do that. I used to shoot on a Canon that was, I believe it was like 20 or 24 megapixels. And I did run into scenarios when I couldn't blow up the pictures to be large enough for me. So anyway, it just depends on what you're looking for. If you're doing like portraits or things that you're not really planning on like putting on a massive billboard, you'll be fine without going high on the megapixels, and then you can actually trade that for other capabilities. But for landscape photographers, and if you want to blow up your work to be really big, I think it's definitely something to consider.
Yeah, I think you touch up on a great point. I think when people start out with photography, they get really caught up on the equipment. And it's important to kind of have an idea on what you want to use that camera for, right? As Paige said, megapixels do matter when the output is something like a giant billboard or if you're printing gigantic prints, right? But I would say that's more of a decision that you can make when you've already gone into the craft and you know what you want. If you're just starting out, I wouldn't be worried about grabbing that 50 megapixel camera, right? Because you don't know if you're gonna need all those pixels. I think it's better just to get a budget-friendly camera.
Yes.
Even your iPhone is great, right? But start shooting, and then you'll start to realize what you want to use the photography for. And if you do want those giant pixels, or you're in the scenario with Paige, or even myself, where we really want to print large stuff, then yes, I would say pixels do start to matter.
Yeah, definitely. And it's all preference.
It's all personal
Paco
preference.
said, I started with a camera that was nice but not crazy expensive, and I used it for about 6 months or so. And then after using it for 6 months, I was like, okay, now I know what I want next.
Exactly, but you're able to, you got to start
just get
somewhere.
like a cheaper one first,
Right,
and like kind of learn
exactly.
how to use it. And then, because I get asked all the time, like, what camera should I start with? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, you can start with this one or that one. Like, there's so many options that are really good options. So I would just start with something less expensive.
I started with a Canon T3i.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then after that I realized, maybe I want a full frame sensor, right? I was shooting landscape, and it wasn't so much the megapixels I was after, but I would say it was more so the full frame sensor, because it was better at capturing light, and when you zoom in, I just feel like it's crispier. But yeah, like I said, personal preference. And I do want to touch up on one thing that Howard says as well. Megapixels can be used as a marketing tactic. For example, there's some sort of smartphone camera that claims to shoot like 35 megapixels. On paper it can do that, but again, something coming out of a smartphone camera, the sensor is tiny. So it's not gonna matter how many megapixels it is because it's still tied to the sensor. And I think they're just
tiny.
it's very tiny, and it's no matter the megapixels, you're not gonna get the same quality as like even a Canon T3i or the camera. What was the camera you started off with?
I started on a T6i.
Yeah, so it's not going to get that same quality because you're working with a tiny sensor, and then people just throw out the megapixels and be like, whoa, 300 million megapixels must be great. But yeah, something to keep in mind. All right.
I know, I think so. There's some cameras coming out right now that have like 60 to 100 megapixels.
Ugh.
Honestly, I don't even know like what I would use that for.
I would say
I
that's
can't
overkill
even like
for
I
the
can't even
majority
think
people.
of a scenario when I would need that. And the file sizes get larger too. So that's another thing. If you
Yes.
don't need the large file sizes, I think one of my file sizes is like 60 meg. Like it's huge.
For one file.
Yeah, maybe it's not. I think it's probably closer to like 30 or 40, but especially when I start stacking images and bracketing, it gets to be like 60, what's it called?
Megabytes?
Megabytes, yeah. It's like megapixels, what's the other word? Yeah, so if you don't want to, like it takes up a lot of space on a hard drive
It
to
does.
hold all those images. So if you don't need it, you don't need it. Don't worry about
Another thing to
it.
keep in
Just stay
mind.
with something smaller and it will definitely still look really good.
What would you say is the average file size when you're shooting with your Sony? Like, what's one raw file from a Sony?
When I put it into Lightroom, probably on like the 30.
Okay,
the
yeah, I'd say that's about average for most like
range.
full frame sensors.
I'm
still shooting with
when
a
I export it, it's a little bit smaller, maybe
Yeah.
15 to 20.
Cool.
After I've
Yeah,
like
and I'd say that's a good
condensed it.
baseline if you're worried about megapixels in space. I think right now the average is like 20 to 30 megapixels per raw file. So I'm still shooting with a Canon 5D3, and I think it's like 24 megabytes. Cool. All right.
All right, let's go back to
Little
this.
sidetrack, but we can get back into it.
Yeah. All right. So brushing. If you tuned in yesterday, you know that this is definitely a huge stylistic thing for me. I like to make my images look as glowy as possible, and I think a lot about where light's going to be hitting more strongly on an image versus not quite so strongly. So we have the light source here in the back, and you can see that this light is going to be coming in from this direction. And so when I zoom in here, there's already shadows created for me, and I want to go in and exaggerate that, especially on my main point of focus, which is this cathedral right here. So what I do with my light brushes, I'm going to draw up the temperature to be warmer, draw up my exposure, highlights a little bit, and then I'm going to go down on clarity and down on dehaze.
Hashtag no clarity.
Yeah, hashtag no clarity. For me, it just creates it makes it look like it's a glowing, dispersed light look. And this is the closest way I've been able to create that look in Lightroom with the capabilities they have, which is amazing that you can even do all of this here. So, all right, so I'm gonna go in here, and again, my light source is coming in from the left-hand side, so I'm gonna paint this here. This is way too bright, but I wanna be able to see where I'm actually painting for now, and then I can go in and I'll adjust it after that.
It's a pretty cool tactic. I agree. Sometimes if you're working with very slight adjustments, it's kind of hard to see what it's actually doing with the photograph.
Yep.
So I like that tactic, is kind of bring it to the extreme, see what it's actually doing, and then you can kind of adjust it afterwards. Because that's the cool thing about this brush tool is you see that little circle, right? The little black dot that appears every time Paige is brushing. That's one brush tool that's affecting everything. So
I don't know why it doesn't go in further. For some reason, I'm having a hard time.
what isn't going further?
My zoom, when I'm trying to zoom in.
Let's see. I think if you hit space bar.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
For some reason, it was like, I'd zoom in and then it would pop back out.
Yeah.
I think, I'm not sure I was doing that. Okay. So you can see that some of these places that I'm brushing isn't actually where light is like hitting strongly, but it still creates more of a, I guess you could say a contrasted look between where I'm gonna put the shadows in later. And I spend sometimes hours doing this because I feel like it makes a huge difference on the end portion of my edits.
Yeah, it's looking awesome. There's a Spencer has the age-old question, right? I'm gonna answer it. We're gonna get deep a little bit.
Get deep.
Yeah, but he's asking, I'm a
Get
16-year-old landscape photographer. Do you have any tips on how I can get my work noticed and grow a larger following? So
this is a great question.
yeah, it's a great question. And what I always say is don't worry so much about the following and doing it for the likes and the fans, right? I say just start shooting, okay? As a 16-year-old photographer that's just starting, fall in love with photography. Know what it is to use the exposure triangle, right? Like understand how aperture works, understand how shutter speed works, understand what the ISO does to an image, and understand how photography works as a whole, and just start shooting. Have fun with it, right? There's so much in this world that you will discover when you start doing it. And I think it's easy to get caught up on getting the right camera, like getting the followers, like getting that perfect image. But the reality is, as someone who's starting, you're not there yet where you need to worry about those things. I think the most important thing that you should do is just pick up a camera and start shooting. See if you even like it, right? Like I know people that spend so much time researching gear, end up buying this crazy expensive camera, and then it turns out they don't even want to do photography anyway.
Yeah, right? I know. And then they don't fall in love with it. It's so true. And my whole life I've done so many different things. I did art for a long time. I have a dance degree. I did dance in college. And I loved all of those things a lot, but I didn't fall in love with those things. Like I literally got a degree in something that I thought I like really, really loved. And I liked it. Like I still am so passionate about like dance and art and all that stuff. But this I like truly fell in love with. Like like photography, it was made for me. And I
Yeah.
didn't know that until I tried it. And
Exactly.
so you have to kind of make sure that it's really something that you're ready to commit to, especially depending on what type of photography you want to do. Landscape photography is very uncomfortable. You have to wake up super early. You have to be willing to like go to places, and like when I take weekend trips, even just a couple weeks ago, I was going to Death Valley, and me and the photographers that I was going with, we woke up at, let's see, what time was it? Oh, sorry, we started driving at 11 p.m. so that we could get to sunrise in Alabama Hills for sunrise.
Wow.
And that's very common. Like, we'll drive through the night somewhere, we'll sleep like 3-4 hours a night sometimes for a whole weekend because we're shooting sunrise and sunset, and we're driving like 4 hours every single day to a new location. It's intense. Like, it can be really intense.
It's a lot.
But for me, like, that's the way I have to do it because I have a full-time job outside of my photography, and I love it. Like, I love those trips. But a lot of people don't love those trips, and if you don't love that, then you might not want to do photography.
Right. Like, people see those amazing sunset shots, those amazing sunrise shots. Hey, guess what? It takes a lot of work to get that shot.
It takes so much work.
And you got to make sure that you love the process of doing that. You got to be okay on waking up at 5 a.m. or even earlier than that, at like 2 a.m. to start hiking somewhere to get that sunrise shot, right?
And if you're doing like astrophotography,
then you got to stay up like,
you're like at 2 a.m. just chilling out in the middle of the dark and nowhere.
Yeah, there's great apps that kind of show you where the Milky Way is going to be at a certain point in the world and a certain longitude and latitude. And sometimes that epic Milky Way shot is not going to be overhead until 3 a.m., right? So are you willing to wake up, stay up all night, get that shot, and then see the end result? Like, I'll tell you, me personally, when I do stuff like that, I'm always like, why am I doing this?
I know, me
But I'll
too.
tell you what, when I start editing that photo and I see the final end result, it's always worth it.
Yeah, same.
Always worth it. I never once say, wow, that sucked, I'm not going to do that again. I'm always like, when's the next time I'm going to wake up and do this, and dread it while I do it, but then fall in love with how the whole process came out to be.
Yeah, even just this past weekend, I went to Point Reyes National Seashore.
Oh, I love
It's so
Point Reyes.
gorgeous, but
Pretty
it
close
was
to San Francisco.
freezing cold. It was so cold, and I was having those thoughts to myself. I was like, oh my gosh, why do I do this to myself? I should have stayed in bed. And then it's amazing. Like, after you're done, like, you go get breakfast, you go get warmed up again, and you start looking at the photos, and it's so worth it. So I think it is important to figure out if this is something that you want to do. And of course, not all photography is uncomfortable. It's just most of the time with landscape, it can be. There's definitely a lot of photography opportunities that you can be very comfortable with as well. And shooting sunset is actually not bad at all. And you can get
what
amazing.
Michelle's saying. She goes, that's why I only do sunsets.
It's really, for me though, the only reason I don't do sunsets as much is because of crowds, because obviously it's not as early, so more people will be out. And if you're in a location where you don't want tons and tons of people in your shot, then it helps a little bit to not do sunset. But I'm a sucker for not having to wake up early, so I definitely still go out later in the day as well.
I think to wrap all this up, I think Howard kind of did a great TLDR, like too long. Well, I guess TLDH, too long didn't hear. Because if you're passionate enough about photography, your images will naturally improve over time, and the fans will follow. So yes, focus on that. Fall in love with the process first. Understand how it all works.
I forgot what prompted this.
Yeah, what tangent did we just go on? Just blacked out.
Actually, one thing I'll add though to anyone who's getting started out and like growing a following, I totally agree. Like, focus on the art, focus on the pictures, get as good at photography as you can. But I will say that on social media, there's amazing photographers that have no following because they don't know how to use social media to their advantage. So there are some, I would definitely recommend doing some research on social media and using hashtags and, finding other photographers that you love and genuinely like their work. You can engage with them, you can network with them, and then you definitely will grow based off of things like that as well. I found a really awesome community in San Francisco of other photographers that I thought were incredible, and it's made me grow quickly on Instagram because we were so engaging with each other, and like other people like followed them, followed me, followed, you know, it's so there are ways that help. But all in all, like focus on making sure that your photos are amazing, because if your photos aren't like the best that they can possibly be, then even if you reach people on social media, they may not actually follow you.
That's a
so
great point.
try really hard to just focus on the craft first. That's going to be the most important part.
Cool. So quick recap, we have about 3 minutes left before we get into Chat and Win. And I want to highlight something that you did earlier that I saw.
Okay.
When you were doing
I've just been brushing away as you guys are just watching.
I think you were brushing on some of those pillars. Did you do a straight line by holding shift? Okay. This is really cool because I've been using this app for a long time and I did not know that. So I think when you do a brush stroke, you can hold shift.
Yes, so I'll click, click, hold shift, and then I click again, and it draws a straight line.
And it's a straight line. That's awesome. I think Photoshop does that, but I actually didn't know Lightroom did that, so that's awesome.
Yep. All right, so you can see this looks terrible right now. It's very messy, but now I'm gonna start bringing everything down a little bit. You can still see like where I was brushing, where I wanted to exaggerate the light. So I'm gonna take a lot of that off.
Yeah, Michelle, that's a great point. Also helps to watch and learn from other photographers, which is why you all are here.
Yes.
Watching Paige
do
her amazing craftsmanship and kind of use that to influence how you may or may not do some edits.
Awesome. Okay, so you can still see that there's some glowing happening around this the building. I'm actually not going to take it off right now. I'm not going to worry about it because in Photoshop I'm going to be doing a sky replacement anyway, and I'm going to be cropping all that out. So I'm not going to stress myself out with like trying to erase all the glow, because normally I would if I wasn't going to go into Photoshop, because it looks messy and glowy. But
yeah,
for
that's
now,
great.
I'm not gonna worry about it.
That internal thought process that Paige just said, I think is a good thing to highlight as well. Is it's going to be helpful to know what this edit is going to look like, so you don't have to spend time on something that's going to be irrelevant, right?
Yeah, have a plan before you start.
Right, because Paige could have spent a lot of time using that glow in the backdrop, but it's not going to be used anyway, so why? Your time is valuable, so why spend all that time doing that if you already have a plan of the end result and it's not going to be part of the workflow?
Yep. So. Yep. All right. And one thing that I'll throw out right now, because I'm already seeing it happen a little bit, when you do a ton of brushing like I'm doing, it will start to lag. Because what Photoshop does is it's making changes. It's like it's putting a change on a layer on top of something, whereas this is actually like changing things in real time. And so it can't handle as much as Photoshop can in terms of like before it starts lagging. So just be aware of that. Like brushing in here, I do like to do it, but it will slow down a little bit if you go as intense as I do, which, that's just who I am. Going intense at the editing style. All right, so I'm just kind of adding a little bit more shadows here and there. How are we doing on time? Still have a few seconds.
We have about 40 seconds before we get into Chat and Win, so
okay.
Just under a minute.
Alrighty.
Main asked a question, is it too noob if I ask what is the biggest difference between Camera Raw and Lightroom? There never is a noob question, that's why we're all here to learn, but that's a great question. I think fundamentally Camera Raw does pretty much the same thing as the global sliders on Lightroom.
Yeah.
So if you look at Paige's screen, kind of on the right, well, she's using brushes, so I think it's a different UI, but essentially Lightroom has the same adjustments that you can do on Camera Raw. So yeah, they're practically the same thing.
I've never actually used Camera Raw. It's something that I want to check out. But yeah, I'll have to look at it. The reason I haven't used it yet is because I'm making an assumption. I'm not sure that it saves the edits into Lightroom. Like the way that, because what I like to do is when I have a photo, I'll edit it, I'll wait a whole year, and I can go back to that image and I can still like erase anything I did, change anything I did, like all the edits are saved still in the photo, and I can change anything and go back to the original file, and I just like that. Camera Raw, I don't know if it has that same capability. Yeah. It definitely could though. All
right, everybody, check that timer out. It says 0, so it is now time for Chat and Win.
Yay!
So we're gonna ask them a question before we jump into our little transitional video. Do you have a question in mind that we can ask them?
Let's see.
I have one in mind. I was with the whole megapixel talk that we did.
Okay, you go.
Why don't you put in chat, if you have a camera, how many megapixels does it have? And even if you have an iPhone or a smartphone or a Galaxy,
Yeah,
how many megapixels do you think that has? I don't know. We're gonna find out. All right, everybody. We'll be right back. All right, everybody, we are back. Let's see what you all think. 12.1 megapixels. Two. My smartphone has 1 megapixel.
Yeah, probably.
20 megapixels, yeah. I wonder, Tim's was very specific. I wonder what he's referring to. 36, 10,
6,
10, 24. I think 24.2 is probably some sort of DSLR. 8.4, maybe a smartphone. Alex Lazarus, 30. Whoa. You're working with a Sony Alpha Man? What you got under there? Not sure exactly. I'm too embarrassed. No, this is all inclusive. I think my iPhone has like, I don't know, 10 or 12.
Yeah, no, when I first started photography, I didn't even know what a megapixel count was.
Yeah,
I had no idea. And I was like, why can't my pictures get blown up really big? I was so confused.
Cool, we have a winner, Maine. I think I'm saying that right. Let me know if I'm pronouncing it right. But congratulations, you are the proud winner of 100 stickers to Sticker Mule. So someone from our team is going to reach out to you on Behance and let you know how to redeem those codes. But if you didn't win, everybody that's participating and joining us in the chat, you actually get a cool little prize too. If you go to stickermule.com/AdobeLive20, you can get 10 stickers for $1.
100 stickers. That's like amazing.
It's crazy.
You'll have stickers for the rest of your life.
Yep. All right, cool. We're back at it.
All right. All right, everyone. We are almost finishing up with this. This whole side is going to be a little darker. And there we go. I'm going to create anything on opposite of the light is where I darken. So I am going to darken all of that right there. And sometimes I'll even lighten something and then darken over the top of it because I wanted there to be an initial contrast before I put another layer of dark over it. It will still make a little bit of a difference. Again, a lot of people will watch me edit and they think that what I'm doing is counterintuitive, but every little like layer of edit and color does something slightly different to the photo. So even if I'm like, you know, declarity and dehaze, and then I'm adding like texture and sharpen, it's because I want there to be a glow, but I also want the image to stay detailed and sharp. And
yeah,
all
it's a lot of push and pull, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like everything you do, then you kind of check the other things to see that it kind of balances all out.
Yes, yes. Okay. So I just barely have that down. I'm gonna adjust my highlights a little bit again. They're still a little too glowy for my liking.
Nora asked another great question. When do you know you're finished editing, and how do you know you over-edited an image? And we touched up on this slightly yesterday.
Yes.
Honestly, that question is really up to you. I think you know how your photos are. And this is also a beautiful thing about photography, right? Is what you think is a good edit at your current state, maybe 3 years down the line, you're like, whoa, what was I doing? But that's the beauty of learning photography and learning any sort of art, right? You're always improving on that, adjusting it, kind of fine-tuning your look and edits to photography. So what you may think is a done photograph now may or may not be the same a couple months or years down the line. So in reality, it's really just when you decide it's done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think as well, it's art. It's up to you. And then when a lot of times I will go back and look at my original image and I'll try to really analyze and say, did I improve the image with my edit? Like,
or are you just kind of,
or am I just like
just editing for the sake of editing?
Yeah, or did I need to change the color? Because what happens to me is I used to think that I have to go through and adjust every single slider. Mm-hmm. Like, there's got to be a better place for this slider to be. Like, is it going to be up or down? But there's a lot of pictures now that I've learned that I'm like, I'm not even going to touch the color. The color looks great. Or the lighting actually looks really fantastic. So just try to allow yourself to only edit the things that you feel like actually improves the image. And then when you're done, it's just, I mean, you can never be really done with it. So just, go with your gut. If you feel like you've improved the image, then just take a break. And sometimes even looking at it the next day will help you know whether or not you want to keep going or backtrack or add more. Just getting away from it for a second helps me a lot.
Tim highlighted that. It's like 3 years, more like next morning, which I think brings up another point that we kind of touched up on yesterday is take a breather, right? If you've spent so much time editing a photo, just take a breather, get a glass of water, take a lap, go outside, and then when you look back with a new, fresh pair of eyes on the photo, you'll either be like, hey, this is done, or be like, okay, redo. Okay, that's extreme, but you get what I mean is, get some fresh pair of eyes on it and then kind of look at it from a different internal lens.
Yep. All right, so just before we get off, I did add a little bit more light on this left-hand side. The dark is on the left-hand side. I drew all of the shapes of the cathedral. And then, added the darks on the opposite sides away from the light. So
nice.
This is pretty much all I want to do in Lightroom. Everything else is going to be in Photoshop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to export several different images into Lightroom. So I'm going to hold down Command.
Let's Jim, let's move us on the other side so people can see
the
little photo that she's working with.
Does that work?
Yeah, so it'll probably be a little bit. Yeah, no worries. So why are you bringing in, so you were working on this photo, why are you bringing in a couple photos in?
Yeah, so I'm going to do a sky replacement.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so now you can see I have all these images down here. I have a sky that I want to use. I have some birds over here that I'm going to put in the sky, just to show you all some different ideas of how to add some interest to photos if you need it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all those images. I'm going to double click. You can just go straight up here, edit in, and you can open all of these photos as layers in Photoshop. So now I'm going to export those, and it might take a second to read, but it's going to open up Photoshop for me. It's going to import all of those as separate layers, and then we can go ahead and jump in and actually start editing. And I'll show you, I'll preface this as well with, I don't typically do all of this on every photo. This is a very intense photo, and I'm going to do a lot of different things to it just to show you the possibilities. I wouldn't necessarily say that this photo needs all of this, but it'll just give you some ideas of how to add different elements and utilize Photoshop when you need it. So
cool. A couple people in the chat are asking to save your work in Lightroom. Here's the cool thing about Lightroom. All the adjustments you make on the photographs actually automatically save.
Yes.
So that is essentially what the catalog is, right? If you lose your catalog, then you lose all the edits that you've made to Lightroom.
But not if you save your XMP file. Actually, let me show you this.
Oh, cool. Good point.
So this might actually take me a second to remember how to do this. There's a setting, catalog setting, metadata.
There it is.
There we go. Okay. So if you click this and automatically write changes to XMP, what that's going to do is it's actually going to create an XMP file in wherever your images are actually being stored. So whether it's on your desktop or a hard drive, it's going to create a copy file of your picture that's called XMP on the end, and that will save your edits. So what happened to me, and the reason I figured this out is because I had a computer that I had to switch all of my work off of, and I didn't really understand how catalogs worked, and I couldn't transfer my catalog over. There was some issues with my computer, and I lost everything. Yeah. All of my edits. I had the raw photos, which is still great, but I had spent hours and hours editing all these pictures, and it was completely gone. So this will save you. Please do this.
That's a great point.
Write your edits.
I forget
to your
about
XMP.
this one, but yes, this is a really great point.
And actually, this is a kind of a temporary catalog that I created just for being able to show you all this stuff. So I hadn't even clicked that on this one. So, but on my typical catalog that I use daily, I do have it clicked so that it saves everything to my hard drive.
Cool. Real quick while we're on Lightroom, Chris Hobdy asks, do you usually do all your highlights in one brush and your shadows in one brush? Or would you normally give more time, separate highlights on different objects, areas of the image?
Yes, just for the nature of today, I did try to go through that really quickly. Usually I do separate light brushes. I'll just recreate a brush and I'll change the edits just slightly on it so that there is more light on some areas and less light on some areas. It's a great point. But yeah, just for today's purposes, I wanted to go through it a little quickly if I could. But I think what's important about that is now, if I go back and try to adjust the light that I just put everywhere, I only have one filter that I can adjust. If I would have created separate ones and then I decided, oh, the light on this side of the picture is a little bit too dim, I could just adjust that light without adjusting all the other light that I added. So it is very useful to actually split up brushes a little bit more.
Yeah, agreed. Cool.
Alrighty.
Let's get to
Great
Photoshop.
questions, everybody.
Yep. Keep the questions coming. These are all great questions. We're all learning here.
Cool. So I'm going to start out with just this photo. This is what we're mostly working with.
Let's do Photoshop full screen real quick. So you can just double tap that title. Yep. Perfect. Thank you.
Got it. Cool. And let's see, the first thing I'm going to do is I need to do a sky replacement. So I had to try a couple different things to figure out what's going to best do it for this image. Sky replacements are tough. I think I know like 6 different ways to do a sky replacement, and depending on the scenario, depending on the photo, different ways are going to work better. I would say that this is probably the most common way that I do sky replacements. When you start having trees and like really small details bleeding up into the sky, it gets pretty tough, which then there's like, multiply tool that you can try to use to put in the sky. There's all sorts of things you can do. Again, this is probably the most like basic general way that I found has worked really well. So what I need to do is I need to make sure that I get a selection of this cathedral so that it's not going to get messed up as I start doing the sky replacement. So I'm going to select, let's see, make sure I'm on the right filter, right layer. Okay, select subject. Select subjects works really well for scenarios like this. I used it in a photo yesterday. You can already see as I go around that it did a pretty good job.
Yeah, and you got the little hands in there.
Yeah, getting everything. So I do want to make sure that it looks absolutely perfect if I can.
Right. Select subject does an awesome job in grabbing the majority of it, but I still encourage everybody that uses this to just kind of zoom in and make sure it got all the little details. So as we can see, we can see a little gap in between those 2 pillars that it missed.
Yeah. And I'm not going to worry about that. That's not, in my opinion, necessary to keep in the image, so I'm not going to worry myself about,
yeah, there you go. There. So she knows what she wants, so it's something that we don't need.
Yeah, so then you don't have to worry yourself about everything. And this tool is actually really handy because it does a pretty good job at recognizing where to go. So you can see I just clicked down in these little spaces, and it already kind of recognizes, let's see, I want to go all just down to 5. See, it just already like kind of knows what I'm thinking and what I'm wanting to do. So that tool is definitely handy.
Jason Rose commented, wow, I just looked at Paige's smug mug. That's incredible work.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Alrighty. Do we have any adventures out there? Any questions about traveling or figuring that out? I know that that's like a question I get all the time, is just how do you travel when you have a full-time job and like all that good stuff?
I would say that's almost a job in itself to figure out travel and the logistics behind going somewhere, shooting it, making sure, because I think living in San Francisco, we have a lot of cool places that we can photograph that people come all over the world. But the reality is San Francisco is really foggy. Right now we actually have amazing weather.
It is really foggy.
It's funny because over the summer, I think a lot of people that don't live here think, oh, California, coastal town.
California. It's going to be so warm.
It's going to be warm. It's going to be great weather. It's going to be the sunshine out. But San Francisco just is like, nope. I'm just going to bring in my boy Carl. So our fog actually has a name. It's called Carl the Fog. And what happens is a lot of times over the summer, it's very cold and you just don't see the Golden Gate Bridge at all, which a lot of people come to shoot. So that's one of those things so when thinking about traveling somewhere, you got to be ready for things like, oh, this may or may not happen. where I'm traveling all this way to try and shoot this thing, but sometimes it may not even be there.
Yeah, and that's, well, I mean,
half...
this picture is a perfect example. Like, I normally would have never gone out to shoot on this day because I'm kind of a snob. I'm like, okay, what's the lighting gonna look like? What are the clouds gonna look like? I only go out if I feel like the conditions are gonna be really good. And this day, like, that I shot this picture that we're working on right now, there was no clouds, and I knew the image wasn't gonna be incredible, but I also knew that I could do a sky replacement. And I'm in another country. I can only have like one opportunity to go get this photo. So obviously I'm gonna go out and try to get it, and then, you know, you have to know in your head, like, what is possible in Photoshop, like what can I do to maintain, just like make this interesting.
Right. You have all these tools at your disposal to now make these things work if you weren't able to get it. So if you go to photograph the Golden Gate Bridge and it's not there, you could just render a 3D model.
Yeah.
It's right there.
Just
and now we're diving into Dimension,
right
which I know nothing about. That's our
oh my gosh. I have
modeling. I think it's even modeling. I don't even know if you can make a 3D mock-up of the Golden Gate Bridge.
Doing sky replacements on the Golden Gate Bridge is not something I recommend.
Yeah.
It is the hardest thing I've ever done.
Not easy.
Because there's the bridge, right? And then there's like 8,000 little
lines, right? Oh,
it's pretty bad. I did it on one photo and I was like, never again, never again.
I learned that the hard way. I was doing a hyperlapse of the Golden Gate Bridge, but I was trying to mask it out, and all those individual little columns was just a nightmare. I was essentially rotoscoping every frame to try and get that all in.
Yeah, it's a mess.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so good enough for now. I have everything selected. I am going to hit Command J on a Mac. And what it's gonna do is it's basically taking that selection and creating another layer. So now I have this. And now what I can do is I'm going to put the sky in between these two layers. I'm gonna turn it back on.
There it is. Check out that sky replacement.
And look at that. It's done. Just kidding.
We're getting there.
And
we're seeing the idea in place.
Beautiful. But actually, I'm not gonna lie. When I was editing this, I was like, this would be such a cool Photoshop photo of like this, like sitting in the desert. Anyway, but
yeah,
we're not gonna do that today.
That looks pretty cool.
You're like, cool, Paige.
Jean, I hear you. I haven't updated my Behance in forever. I stay probably most current on Instagram, but I've been putting that off, so I do got to update my Behance with photography.
Alrighty, so what I'm doing right now is I have to line up this shot as well as I can and this sky as well as I can. When you're doing a sky replacement, you have to think about the light source, and you have to make sure that the sky that you're putting on top of the sky that exists has a similar light source, or else it's gonna look really fake. So my sun is coming in over here, and so I need to, in this sky that I'm putting over the top of it, the sun is up in this like shiny spot, as you can see. So I need to line those up as well as I can. To do that, I'm bringing down the opacity of the sky image so that I can kind of move it around, see where I want it to go.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think when you're doing sky replacement or compositing, I think lighting is key.
Absolutely.
Right? Like that's pretty much the key that will make an image look somewhat, or make it look believable, is if you have a light source coming in from left to right, make sure that the objects that it's hitting is coming from left to right, not the opposite side. That'll be a dead giveaway that there was some sort of replacement going on.
Awesome. All right, so now what I can do is I can bring back some of the opacity, and I'm gonna create a mask on the image, which is this little white box right here. And what this allows me to do is hide and show some of this image that I'm using for the sky. So what I can do is I have this black and white box here on the left-hand side. I'm gonna create a brush where I'm able to conceal some of this image so that you can't see it anymore. So I'm going to bring up my brush size a bit and make sure that I have everything selected correctly. And if you are on, Photoshop used to drive me nuts because if I was accidentally clicked onto like this instead of this, it didn't work. And it would take me forever to figure out, like, what am I doing? Why isn't it working? I totally watched a tutorial on this and now it's not doing what I thought it was. So you have to be really careful about like what you're clicked on, what layers hidden, what layers are visualized, and it will, sometimes Photoshop will automatically select a new layer when you make a change on something, and then you'll keep editing and it won't be working anymore. So just take a really close look at what tool you have selected, what layer you have selected, what mask you have selected. All of that will make a huge difference. My brush was only at an opacity of let's see, oopsies. It was at a low opacity, so I have to make sure it's at 100% so I can actually erase all of this stuff. So now you can see I'm bringing back some of this original image that's on the back layer so that you can see it now. And the nice thing is that I made it so that this part of the image was its own layer. So now I could do anything and it just it doesn't touch it, right? Like it doesn't hurt it. And so if I wouldn't have done that, this would be much more difficult because I'd have to be trying to go along the edge of this, which is nearly impossible. So
yeah, that's gonna take a lot of time.
It would take so long. That's actually how I had to do that bridge shot that I told you about. It was really bad.
Wow.
So, okay, I don't have this in the best spot. Okay, so it's gonna look something like that, but I have to go in and do it a little bit more detailed. But you can already see that it looks a little bit more realistic that I have the light source lined up there than when I originally put it on. So now I'm gonna get a little bit more specific with it now that I can see what I'm doing. Oh no, I left the glow right there. You can see that from Lightroom, so I'll have to go in and fix that a little bit later. But I'm gonna start messing around with this brush, and in this background area, I am gonna try to utilize a foggy look because these clouds are so dark, and then the horizon is a little bit more orange. So I actually want to bleed the sky back down a little bit. So I'm gonna make a smaller brush. I'm going to change the opacity. Oh, actually I need to change it up here for the brush opacity down a little bit. And I'm gonna try to brush some of this back in so that it looks a little bit more like a foggy look on these hills.
Here you go.
So it blends a little bit better. Oopsies. And this takes some messing around with for sure. I could spend quite a bit of time making sure that I get this perfectly right and blended, because it's a tough thing to make scar replacements look seamless, and it's definitely important to spend a lot of time on this blending.
We have someone in the chat with your same last name, Paige Tingey.
Gosh.
This looks so dope.
That's my husband.
There's your husband. There
Oh
you
my
go.
gosh.
I was saying family or husband?
No,
he's one of them.
Yeah, he's my husband. Look at that.
That's awesome. Yeah, and this is touching up on what we talked a little bit about yesterday. Is all these subtle little touches that Paige is working on is what really makes an image, right? It's just these subtle little brushes to kind of bring that fog and shadows into it is what's making it a lot more realistic.
Yeah, so you can see that there's a little bit of, see, I still think that it doesn't look quite real yet, because it's still, it's getting there, right? So I have to keep I flip back and forth a lot between conceal and reveal. That's how you remember it.
It's white reveals, black conceals. Yes. I have to think about that one too.
I have to remember it. It's
white reveals, black conceals.
This is totally irrelevant, but there's a saying about those snakes that can kill you, where it's black on
it's the
yellow
coral
kills
snake.
a fellow, and I cannot for the life of me remember which way it goes, and so I'm I'm gonna die one day because I'm not gonna know.
Black on yellow, you're a dead fellow, or something.
But it also
I don't know it either, and I think they existed in Florida.
You're great.
Cool. I should know this, but
this is fantastic. Okay, and I think typically what tends to make this look a little bit more real is if you use some of the lines that are already there for us. So I can kind of drop that down a little bit. So I already have some of these lines of these shadows that I'm gonna kind of play off of and erase along the lines of the clouds over here. This cloud is looking fake to me because what cloud is gonna be black right there? So I may even have to get some healing out and start messing around with it. But yeah, we're trying to make it look like there's some fog happening.
Right.
And it looks, again, it's getting there.
It's getting there.
Yeah, we have a little bit more work we can do on it. But I may jump over to the other side to show you that because I think you get the idea here.
Steve says, want to avoid all snakes? Come to New Zealand. None here. That's
That's so cool. I'm like,
it's a really good point. Actually, I spent some time in New Zealand backpacking through the North and South Island.
Van.
And I loved the fact that I did not have to worry about anything in the outdoors. Because here in North America, we have black bears, which aren't anywhere near as dangerous as grizzly bears. But I've been in Canada as well, backpacking there, and the thought of running into a grizzly or running into something that can bite you and just ruin your trip is like, dang. But in New Zealand, there's none of that. And you just have a lot of birds. And you have, I think the craziest thing I ran into in New Zealand was the kia. It's the most troublesome bird ever. It's like the world's only alpine parrot. But yeah, it was very rascally. It'll just destroy your backpacking equipment if you left it out. So
that was the most vicious thing that you ran
yes,
into.
literally. Like they have crazy sharp beaks, and they're so curious that they'll just bite through your tent to like just be like, hey, what's up? Like, cool, thanks for ruining my tent.
In Arizona, if you go to Havasupai, they have killer squirrels. Like
killer
no
squirrels.
joke. Like that's what they call them because
please tell me what a killer squirrel is.
They will eat through your tents, your backpacks. Man. Like you literally have to put your food in a bear bag and hang it outside, or else they'll eat into your tent. Even toothpaste, they'll eat through to get your toothpaste.
Is it because they have been fed by humans, that they see humans and they think food?
I have no idea. I have no idea why they're
killer
like
squirrel, a killer squirrel.
I have no idea.
That's so crazy.
But yeah, some of the girls that I went with last year, their tents got. Oops, I clicked a button.
Yeah, Damien, grizzly won't ruin your trip. It will end it, and it will probably end it in the worst way possible. So.
Oh, I know. Scary stuff. Be safe. That's another thing is like with landscape photography too, is I've found that you do have to be really careful and don't get yourself into a sticky situation. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I want to get this composition, so I'm going to hike up this hill and fall off. You know, you don't want that to happen.
No,
so it's like.
That's another thing with getting the shot right. I mean, also do your due diligence, right? Don't just think about putting your safety aside to get that shot. Is like, is this really worth me like climbing up here? Or also do your research. Like in Canada, if you're going to be in the wild country, people really recommend that you bring bear spray. And we hiked with some bear spray. I had it kind of holster on my belt so like I can quick dry just in case anybody. Like I was really shooken up about the grizzlies.
Prepared.
Yeah, be bear prepared, bear aware.
Bear aware. Yep, it's you have to be careful, and also shooting in cities is even dangerous because you may get
you could get your gear stolen.
Could get your stuff stolen, so be very safe. Try to shoot in groups if possible. I know it's hard because it's hard to find. Just sometimes I know there's not always photographers that want to go out and it's hard to meet them and things like that. So, but just try to be as safe as possible.
It's a really good point.
Very dangerous sometimes. San Francisco is a place that you need to be very careful. Don't ever leave anything in your car.
No.
I know countless people who have had their cars broken into. So.
Yeah, unfortunately, in San Francisco, it is a thing where if anything is left in a car in plain sight, then it could get broken into. So, same principle applies to a majority of cities or just anywhere if you're traveling with expensive gear. Take that backpack with you, right? Yeah. Minor inconvenience of hauling this backpack into a restaurant or whatever is going to be way better than you coming back and seeing, oh, it's gone.
Yep. Absolutely. So you can see that I'm trying to brush along like where these clouds already are so that it looks a little bit more realistic. Otherwise, we might run into some issues there.
Everybody, we have about 30 minutes left for that design feedback, so go ahead and submit your designs to Discord so Paige and I can go over them and give you some feedback in about 30 minutes. If you don't know what happened, make sure to tune in to Claudia's stream. She was on live before us, but she does a pretty awesome take on how to do the challenge for today.
Oh, actually, yeah, I was watching it before we got on, and it's incredible.
Yeah.
It's a completely different way of using Photoshop than what I'm typically used to seeing.
Yeah, there's it's designing in Photoshop.
It's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay. All right, so it's looking okay. There's still a little bit there's a few spots that I feel like don't look amazing. I actually might take this guy down a little bit. let's try this. You can see that this is pretty tedious with sky replacements. This one is particularly difficult, just given that I really wanted to use this sky. I thought this sky was gorgeous, and I wanted to, the clouds I thought would create like a really nice line as well. But it's difficult with all of these like clouds making it bleed in. I wasn't able to just use like a horizon in the previous image because I wanted to shift it down to make the light sources match. So this is definitely like one of the more difficult sky replacements that you'll see, just in terms of making it all line up nicely. Oh. Okay, so I'm going to probably just call this good for now, just for the purpose of everyone being able to see what the other skills that I want to teach for this image. But I think there is definitely some improvements to make on the sky, shifting it around and blending it a little bit better.
Yeah, for sure.
We will leave it for now. And
yeah, but I mean, the idea is definitely there.
yeah, you can see the purpose, and I can show you. I have another image. I did this, so I can show you like what the finished sky replacement looked like in a minute. So, all right, so let's stop there for now. I would keep adjusting that until it looked right. The sky layer is a little bit dark for like the rest of the image. So what I'm gonna do is, oopsies, I'm gonna go over here and do image adjustments, brightness, contrast, and I'm just gonna lift up the brightness a bit.
A little bit.
Yeah,
Nice.
so you can see how already that matches so much better. There we go. And one thing that I know I did in the last one that helped a lot is I just actually did like a bit of erasing over the clouds down on the bottom. Also, if you want to change your brush size, it's these bracket.
The bracket
keys.
Like the one on the left makes it smaller, the one on the right gets it a little bit bigger.
Yeah, so there we go.
Yeah, I'm all about shortcuts, because think about just having to go up to that, slide it, then go back and brushing. If you use the Creative Cloud Suite a lot and you're using on apps a lot, I'd encourage you to kind of look at what the shortcut is for the tools that you use a lot, because they will be such a big time saver. I saw this crazy stat. I couldn't tell you where I saw it, but I do a lot of video editing, but somebody that is using shortcuts on something like After Effects and Premiere, as opposed to just relying on clicking and dragging, like say they do that professionally for 40 hours a week, by the end of their lifetime, you'd end up shaving off like a couple days.
What?
Yeah, I mean, that might be an extreme, but
still, that's crazy.
yeah, I mean, it adds up a lot, because it's if you're using something so much and you're relying on the mouse and just dragging and clicking, there's almost always a shortcut on these apps, or you could even make a custom shortcut based on your keyboard preferences. And I promise you, it'll make your workflow so much quicker and snappier, so you can focus on all the other things instead of just trying to use a tool that you know how to use, that you can just toggle with a click of a button.
It's huge, and I need to be better at it too. Sometimes I forget shortcuts a lot. So
I usually go with the mouse, but I do catch myself when I start using a tool and tool more and be like, I wonder what the shortcut is for that.
Gonna work. Yeah.
Google's your best friend. I'll usually be like, shortcut for brush size, and then usually be like the top result.
Yeah, it's a huge difference. Cool. So we have birds.
Birds.
And let's put them in the
birds.
image.
Did you take this photo?
I
of the
did.
birds?
So yeah,
Sweet.
this is, and I really, I do this a lot where if I'm driving and I see like a beautiful sunset or something, I'll just like take pictures of the sky or take pictures of birds or whatever, because they come in handy. They come in handy.
They definitely can.
So what I'm gonna do is I want to get rid of this obviously like the background stuff, and I just want the birds only. So I'm gonna go to select, I'm gonna go to color range, I'm gonna go to highlights, and I'm gonna move this around. Oh, it's gonna, see, this is one of those things. I can't have these visible or else it's gonna select all of them. So I have to unclick those to make sure that it's not gonna select all of this. I'm gonna do that again, color range, highlights. And I want it to select all the highlights, but not the birds, right? So I can kind of see right there that it's gonna select everything but the birds. I'm gonna delete it, and
there it is.
now I have birds.
Now we have birds.
It didn't work perfectly, so what I have to do now is I'm gonna go and I'm going to erase some of this stuff. Actually, I'm gonna try that one more time because I wanna get it a little bit more drastic. Let's see. Let's go to there.
Whoa.
Whoa, what the?
We just found like some
That
wind
was
pattern.
really weird. Yeah, what was that? I'm gonna brighten up the image. Let's do this. This will help. All right, third time's a charm.
Third time's a charm.
Color range. Magic, okay. There we go.
Nice.
Much better, cool. So you have to mess around with things, as you can see, because there's very small things that Photoshop is so comprehensive. So if it'll try to guess what you're thinking and what you want, and so you really have to be clear what it is you want it to do.
Oh yeah, many ways to do one thing in Photoshop.
Absolutely.
So many ways.
Okay, let's do it on this now. So we brightened it a bit. And we're gonna go to select, color range, highlights, hit OK, and delete. Get rid of the background. There.
There it is.
Cool.
Yay,
Make
now we
sure
have
all
birdies.
this is gone. Now we have birds. Amazing. Okay, so now what we can do, Command D is deselect, by the way. Now we can start bringing things back in. So now we have these lovely birds, and I want to just move them around initially. So I want to make them look like they're flying kind of into the sunset. So I actually want them to be flying the other direction. So I'm gonna flip horizontally so they look like they're flying that way. And I'm good there for now. I'm gonna flip these ones. Oopsies, not upside down. That does not look real. And there we go. So now you can see that I have like birds flying over into the sunset. Compositionally, I want it to, yeah, let's talk about that for a sec. So right now what I'm seeing is I have like this line of, that these clouds are creating that's going up and away from my main point of focus. So I see sort of like a line this direction and then a line back this direction. So it's almost like a C-ish curve.
With the light.
Yeah, with the light.
Your eyes are kind of focusing on where that light's going. And it's just,
exactly, yeah. And so I'm gonna even use the birds to help that a little bit. So what I'm thinking about, like, where do I want these birds to be? I'm going to put them here, right?
Yeah.
So that I can kind of add to that same line that I wanted to play around with.
Yeah, this is great internal thought process right here, right? Is we're even as the edits go further and we're firing up other apps, we're still keeping composition in mind, and that's influencing the way that we're doing this image.
Yeah. And if you want to see like some other little tricks, like one thing I'll do sometimes is like you can go in here and you can select just like these two little birds. Come on. That's it, selects all of them. No.
Okay, and welcome. Thanks for joining us. I'm seeing in the chat we have talks about updating the OS and apps, and I will say my personal take on that is I'm always hesitant to do a big Mac OS update, especially when I'm in the middle of a project. Right, like say I'm in the middle of an edit using Premiere Pro or After Effects or just using any other software. I usually wait till I'm done with that project before I update. Because there's so many things that just may or may not be compatible with each other, whether it's your operating system, the drivers or whatnot. So I always wait until I'm done with a project, done with an edit, done with some photography stuff, and then we'll update.
Like you can see that I accidentally selected part of those birds, so I can erase that.
Shaved them off.
I shaved them. So what I just did was I copied those 2 birds. I selected them. I hit Command C and then Command V. And then it created a new layer for me so that now I can drag these little birds up top here, and I could like make them smaller, bigger. I'm basically like duplicating little birds for myself if I need them, which this image doesn't like super need more things in it, but just showing you how to do it.
Nice.
Let's see. And I need to erase those shaved birds up here. So those are gone. So yeah, now you can see I have like birds moving from, here to there.
Nice.
Right now,
it's looking awesome.
They're looking like really black, and since I matted all my blacks at the beginning, when you saw me like draw up the shadows on the curve line, these birds look they're like popping out too much because they're not blended well. So there are actually some blend modes that you can place on them, but honestly, like what I feel like works also is actually just going down on the opacity. I put it down to be like 60%, so it looks like they're a little bit hazy. The light is kind of shining on them, past them, however you want to take a look at it. That's kind of how I think about it. So I'm going to put it about 65, and I'm going to do that to all of these layers with birds on them. So I think already it looks more real that they're not so bright, or so black, I mean. It makes them blend a little bit nicer. Okay, so doing good so far. The next thing that I want to do is I'm going to show you a little bit of cloning and stamping. So this is one of the reasons I don't like shooting sunset is look at this. So much fun. There are so many people, cars, all sorts of stuff.
Oh yeah.
And Photoshop is amazing with this.
It's the
like
right
it
tool
is
for the
so
job.
easy to take out people. Like I go like that and it will just work usually. Oh.
The layers.
I'm like, I don't have the right layer selected. See, this is what happens. Yeah. Okay. I'm actually trying to decide if I want to combine the layers. Not yet. Okay. I'm going to make sure that I'm on the right layer. I'm going to go here and boom, it's gone.
Done. Later.
So this is the heal tool. With healing and clone stamping, like you'll be able to get rid of everything. It's not foolproof though. There are some places that it like looks kind of strange and it's actually pretty hard to get rid of things. Like you can see that car didn't go as well. I'm gonna try to make my brush bigger because I actually think that might make
grab it with one stroke.
Yeah, with one stroke it will make a
Maybe
difference.
help out,
Yeah, it helps out.
It's still a little bit there, but it's better than just doing a bunch of little small strokes.
And I actually am gonna crop this image and crop a lot of this out anyway, so I'm not gonna worry much about that.
Later.
Get rid of them. I love it. It's like fun to me. I'm like, and they disappear.
It's
like in the movies when you have those guns where they shoot someone and they just disintegrate. Yeah, it's literally what's happening right now. So yeah, we can get a little bit. I might actually clone stamp this piece right here. I'm gonna extend the tree over this spot. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab the tree and I'm just going to move it up a little bit.
Love it.
To get rid of that weirdness. Oh, I got the weirdness in there still.
Maine brings up a funny point. The perfect technique to use when someone of your family just breaks up with someone else. Move them from the pic. There you go. Photoshop does that. They erase people.
They literally erase people.
Oh, man.
Cool. That looks a little funky right there, but let's see. I think it's also because you can see that. We'll get in here real close and friendly. And there we go. Cool. And there's a lot going on in this image with this, so let's keep trying. The heal brush is so nice if you can. Yeah,
I mean, look at where we are already. I mean, there was just cars and people there.
Yeah, and
right
now
above
it's
us.
Like nothing.
And now, where'd they go?
Where'd they go? Look at that.
They were never there.
They were literally never there.
Yeah, Nora says, The Eraser.
Seriously.
So that could be the title
look
of
at
a
that.
movie.
Even on the, did you just
I
see
had
that?
a feeling
I'm
the
gonna do that
stairs
again.
we're gonna work really well with
like,
this.
It's so perfect. Like, oh, that one wasn't as perfect. Let me go a little bit
Yeah, if you
smaller.
just probably do like a 1-2, like him. Yeah.
Let's just do. Oh, that was a little bit better.
Yeah, it's
Let's
working.
try this again. There we go. Look at that. It's insane. I'm gonna leave this one's hard because it's taking all the information around it, and this one's tough because there's, come on. There's, like too many colors around.
Yeah, I think it took from that bike.
It takes from the right-hand side a little bit too. So you can get the clone stamp, and you can actually just like manually do it too.
Nice.
Which works
yeah,
really
that
well.
worked really well.
Yeah, so you can just like move stuff over a little bit. It's so zoomed in right there that you won't even like.
Yeah, I mean, someone that's seeing this, especially if the output is something like Instagram.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's already cropping it, or sorry, downsizing it just by uploading it. I mean, I feel like we're our worst critics will be like, oh, but you can see it. But most people that just see this, like especially on a smartphone.
Yeah, know what you want to do with your image. If I was gonna blow this up and put it on a billboard, obviously I'd make sure this is like pristine. I'm just taking these out because it's fun. Okay. Like, look at that. That's just like crazy how easy it is to take all this stuff out. So yeah, you can go through and just like erase all of this mess. All these people over here.
Easy peasy.
And let's see. I'm just gonna continue going up along this line. It's just gonna create, it's lessening distractions, especially with an image like this, where it's, there's like a lot going on already, and there's a lot of things to look at. The less that you have like all these like weird distractions and colors everywhere, all these people over in this corner, it's gonna help quite a bit to just get rid of some of that. This part is much more difficult over here because of all of this. Yeah. So it's
conflicting contrast.
Yeah, there's a lot of colors. So clone stamp is gonna work a little bit better over there. Over here, I'm not gonna make you guys watch me like Photoshop it all in detail. But we'll just kind of do a simple like blur over here for now. Just gonna get rid of these things. So anyways, you'd wanna do that a little bit more specific in that back corner, but even again, zoomed out, like you can't even see that there's people there. Right. So if this is just going on Instagram or it's gonna stay pretty small, you definitely don't need to worry yourself too much about it. I'll even get as specific as like getting rid of, I have to change layers again now. Getting rid of some of these things. And then the other big thing that I want to get rid of is this. So that to me like is really ugly.
Yeah, it's a behemoth.
Yeah, like what is this? So I'm going to use cloning for this, and I'm going to clone these trees over and clone these trees down into it. And I definitely am going to darken this a lot. So again, like I know that I'm going to darken the image a lot right there. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect as long as like the color and I'm getting rid of some of this right there. So let's get a bigger brush. Oopsies. Okay, at this point I am going to merge these layers, even though normally I wouldn't do that because I still want to adjust the sky a little bit, like it's not perfect, but since I already have a version to show you all that is already finished, then I am going to show you that. Why is this not selecting? I must have something weird clicked here. Okay, I'm gonna change the hardness a little bit. That might help. There we go. That helped actually a lot.
Nice.
Okay. I'm gonna take this over here and create like a little brush. It's gonna look like this house has like a roof of leaves on it.
And use solar panels.
Yeah.
Felipe goes, poor people being deleted from the world. Well, not the world, but our world.
Yeah, just
right? Our world. We don't want them in our world.
Poor people.
See you later.
Poor people. They're not that poor. They're okay.
They're okay. They're here.
They're still somewhere. Yeah. They're just not here.
They're alive. Just not in our little composite.
Just not in our little space over
It's
here.
the Thanos tool. Nice.
Who said that? That's
Snap.
amazing.
Done. See you later. That's a good way to look at it. Actually, I like that iteration of the tool. That. Yeah, I'll just go ahead and use the Thanos brush real quick. Thanos, yeah.
Thanos.
That's funny.
Let's see. Okay. Again, you get the idea here. Even the clone, the heel brush actually works okay right there as well. So, all Alrighty. I know that it's gonna be darkened right there, and I need to crop everything. So for now, that's okay. You can see that this is like a duplicate. Sometimes that really bothers me if I like was looking close enough. I see this in images all the time. Like I'm like the master like
you have an
picker
eye for
out
these
of
things
like
now.
who clone stamped and like who did a crappy job at it. This is definitely like a quick job. But little things like, if you're clone stamping a big area, I wouldn't leave it like completely replicating. So I even go in and like I'll change things around. Like I'll just like clone stamp on top of itself so that like branches don't look like they're duplicated, and even little things like that. Like now this doesn't look the exact same as that, you know.
Right.
So because people will be able to pick out like a repeat really easily of something. So yeah, just watch out for that sort of thing.
Good tip.
Good stuff. Alrighty. So, sorry, I'm gonna get these last people out real quick because they are bothering me.
Snapped. Done.
Thanos.
Thanos them.
Thanos seeing them. And boom. Boom. Anyways, I could spend all day on this. Cool. Alright, the next thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a crop, and I'm gonna show you, for anyone who is looking for Instagram pictures, one thing that I run into a lot is I have a composition that I think is perfect, and then all of a sudden I'm expected to post a 4x5 picture, and it doesn't look as good in the 4x5 picture. And so then you get into Photoshop and you're like, okay, do I like smash it down? Do I like crop off like half the picture? And it's actually really frustrating to me. So one thing that you can do in some images is this. So let's see.
Let's back up real quick. Why would we want to use a 4x5 crop for Instagram?
Because that's the max height.
It is. Instagram is very visual. If you're working, say, with landscape, a 16:9 crop, you're really limiting how much space actually goes in that pose. So you'll notice a lot with photographers such as Paige or other people that just really do this professionally and have a lot of followers, is they take as much real estate as they can, and I think that golden crop for Instagram is the 4x5, because that way you get the most real estate from your post and it really sticks out. So if you're posting portrait on Instagram, definitely try and use 4x5.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so this one actually like works out okay, the way that I did the sky. But what I am gonna do is, let's say this is like the perfect crop, and I definitely want the crop to be right here. What I'm gonna do, rather than like sacrificing the crop for Instagram or like the image to Instagram, I have all this stuff bled onto the sides. So it's actually not a too difficult fix. I'm gonna select this little area up here that's not matching very well. I'm going to go to edit and content fill.
I had a feeling you were going to do that.
Yes.
This is more Adobe Sensei magic, which is super cool.
Yeah, it's actually really awesome, and it does a great job. So now I'm gonna what it's doing is it's asking me, okay, like what do you want? What do you want me to look at to put into this space? And I'm saying you can pull any of this data right there, and you can see what it just did, like in this little preview thing. It like seamlessly.
There you go.
Just like fixes it for me.
This is crazy.
I love it.
Blown away when I see.
I know when I started doing this, I was like,
is.
oh my gosh, this is incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, and I need to do it for this area as well. And it's so fast. Literally, it's the quickest thing. Okay. And okay, edit, content to where fill. Okay. Oh, okay. Pause. This is what I did. Yep. It automatically switched me when I created that new thing. It automatically changed me. So now I have to go make sure I have to click back onto.
Good catch, though. I mean, I think someone that starts off with Photoshop, they're like, why isn't this working? It's such a common thing.
It happens to me.
This happens to me all the time too.
Yeah.
I rarely use Photoshop. I will, just in a very off chance, but even the simple layer changing can really just stump me.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh.
Yeah, it just, you have this moment of like, why
isn't it working? It should work. Yeah,
I'm doing it right. Why isn't it working? Okay, that actually did really good too. So we'll go ahead and say okay. And voila.
There it is. Sensei magic.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. And you can like zoom in real close, and a lot of times I'll zoom in really close and I'll need to do like a little bit of healing or a little bit of clone stamping if there's like a lot of detail, but all in all, it's like, it does a really good job on its own. I'm gonna do this little sliver of color right here. And content, where fill. Oh my gosh, I forgot again. See, look at that.
Yeah, I think it just defaults to that.
Yeah, it defaults to go up
There you
into
go.
it. Yeah, it goes to the new layer because it thinks like it's thinking, oh, the
New
next
layer,
thing you're
work on
gonna
this
do.
one, right.
Yeah, you want to work on this layer. It makes a lot of sense why it does it. It's just it's hard for us to remember that it's
Right.
doing that.
For sure. Especially
If you're
people
not
that are
used
new
to
to
it.
Photoshop as well.
Yes.
Guilty.
Oopsies. Okay. And this is the last one, so let's see how this goes. I don't want this to show again. Okay. And voila. Let's see how it looks. All right, there you go. So now I didn't
Cool.
have to like
Check that out.
sacrifice the crop at all, and I was able to get everything in here. And there is a few specks in my sky that I could go in and heal. You can see that
Just a
there's
tiny
like
one.
something happening there. Oopsies, around the wrong layer.
I feel like there's two ways to go about little dust particles on the sensor. Is one, get rid of them in post-production, such as Photoshop and Lightroom, which I would say most people do. Or for like the crazy nitpicky person, such as myself, is I'll buy this kit to clean my sensor. It's gone.
Yeah, I do
Or
that.
even the dust blower helps a
Yeah,
lot
I
too.
have the little dust thing, and every time before I go out and shoot,
do
I
it.
do that. What happens is like if you're with landscape photography, you're out in the dust and the dirt, and like switching lenses
Oh, yeah.
is when it happens to me. So I'll
Now-
switch it. I won't even notice that something got into the sensor
Until afterwards, yeah.
until I have this little speck on all my images.
I would
and
say
I'm like,
this
awesome.
is more common with mirrorless bodies, right? Like
Yeah.
the Sonys and say like the Panasonics, because what happens when you do have a mirror body, like such as the Canon 5D series, is there's a mirror blocking the sensor, so it is kind of a barrier to blocking things when you're changing lenses on the field. But with mirrorless, as it states, there is no mirror, so it's just direct sensor exposure, which I think happens a lot. So if you're doing landscape, always have one of those rocket blowers. So
Yeah,
you can
it
just
makes
kind of
a difference.
blow
for
that,
sure.
and it's super. It takes like 8 seconds to just blow that sensor, and can help
It cleans
you.
it right out, yeah. Cool, cool. All right, so here was this version. It turned out pretty good.
Yeah,
When
I
you're
think
able
it came out
to get a little bit more detail on the sky, or a little bit better like sky replacement. Has to think about it. What's going on here? Oh. It turns out it actually looks about the same.
Yeah, I think it came out great.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I like added those birds in there. I made them a little bit smaller. You can see just like every time I edit it, every time you edit something, it will look slightly different.
Yeah.
So
I think those rays of light coming through the mountains into the scene just really kind of sell it.
this right here.
Yeah, it's like a cohesive image.
Yep.
It's great.
Cool.
So we have about a minute and a half. We can answer some questions real quick. I saw a question from Noor. It's kind of a loaded question, but maybe you have some easy kind of go-to advice. But is how do you estimate pricing for your prints? What's the best method?
This is a really tough question.
Yeah. It can be.
Because I think it's actually more about how you plan to, or who you plan to sell to, and what sort of printing you're planning to do. If you're gonna do like a really cheap print on cheap canvas, you shouldn't sell it for a ton of money. But if I know photographers that sell their work for $5,000 per image, and they sell to like really high-end clients, but they're printing on like the nicest of the nice paper. It's like becoming full-on art that's going to last like hundreds of years, right? So it's so back and forth on like how to price your images. there's stuff online that I would take a look at, depending on like how there's like estimates that you can look up on if you're like an amateur photographer versus a professional photographer. This is about how much one image will go for. I also like look at photographers that have websites that are similar to myself, and I'll kind of try to gauge like what are they putting their prices
I mean
as.
that touches
You
up
just
on
have to
check out
use
the
all
market.
your sources.
Right? It's like I said, it's a loaded question. You really got to do your research, see what the market's like, and then also be true to yourself and know what you're worth, right? Like don't undersell yourself, but also don't try and charge the premium that somebody that's been in the game for decades.
Yeah,
right?
Very true.
Yeah.
Like, because one thing that does happen is photographers tend to undercharge a lot of times, and then it brings down the value of photography for everybody. And so then photographers that it's their source of income have a hard time making money off of it. Anyways, but
yeah, I mean that's a whole topic that we can get into for a while. It's like, you know, when you're freelancing you'll get those crazy clients that are like, it's for exposure. I'm like, cool, can I pay my bills with exposure? Like, no.
Yeah. Yep.
You don't want to just give in for stuff like that just for the sake of doing it, because it does bring the market down for everybody else. So stick to your guns. Again, just know what you're worth and really be true to yourself and do your due diligence and just stick to a price and stick your guns to it, because yeah. Cool. That countdown says 0-0, so let's get into some design feedback.
Yes, let's do it.
Shall we? Cool. So let's hop on over to my screen. Cool. So the challenge today was brushes, and it was to create an illustrated text using brushes, shapes, and textures. And just to kind of give you a reference point of what Claudia did is here's her design. Right, so it kind of plays into a little bit of what we were looking at yesterday with that kind of surreal fantasy world, but then we're adding a letter to it. So I already saw some submissions. They're looking awesome. Let's go ahead and take a look at them. Oh, there's so many. You guys are doing great. Cool. Let's start with this.
Ooh, I already love it. Okay.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
There's clearly a color palette going on and some sort of...
Can you make it full screen?
Yes, I
if
can.
Possible.
Thank you for telling me. I wish I could zoom in. I don't know why it's not letting me zoom in.
No, but this is really cool. I like the... Oh,
there we go.
There we go.
This is way easier.
I really like the letter, and I even love that you like even changed to like the shape of it.
Yeah, check this out. Yeah, let us know. Did you make this letter on the brush? Yeah, I think you've had to have. I don't think you could have typed this out and then manipulated it, but this is great work. I mean, I have little to say about this. I mean, you clearly established an image here, and I think these colors, these little design specs, and the letter and this image, it's done really well. This almost looks, I don't know if this is a picture, if they illustrated this.
You did pretty good on like having like the clouds and the fog be in front of what they should be in front of.
Yeah.
That looks really good. I like you blended the hills really well. Like even though, because sometimes I think everyone thinks they have to like blend something continuously, and I sometimes think it just looks better to have like a clean cut when it's already something that it looks like it's floating, right? Yeah, no, I don't have a lot to say either. I like the color choices, like the soft pinks and the blues and the whites and the grays. It's really nice.
I guess if we're just nitpicking at this point, but if I had to say one thing, maybe blend the trees a little bit more into this landscape, just down here.
Or maybe create like a little bit of a shadow.
Yeah, or a shadow.
Because there's shadow on the hills behind it.
There you go. Yeah.
And there's not a shadow being cast by the trees. Yeah.
You really have to zoom in to see this.
Yeah.
But yeah, we kind of get a closer look. Like adding a shadow, like very subtle shadows, I think will kind of play more into these trees being here, and then maybe blending them a little bit to this ground, so it doesn't look like they were just kind of stamped on top of this.
Yeah, and I can see that you flipped the trees on the left hand side. It looks like you like flipped
these right
them.
Here?
Yeah, so they're flipped. So those ones actually look really different. You can tell that the ones on the right hand side are like the same set. So I guess you could even like try to delete one of the trees, or I don't know, that'd be tough, but then you can't see that it's like a repeat. When we were just talking about the clone stamp and all of the things that I was doing down at the bottom of the image, yeah, you can definitely make some more adjustments to try to make it look like nothing is being repeated.
Right, cool, great job. That was from, let's see, that was from snow.e. Yeah, that was great, good job. Okay, here we go. We have Diamantina. Here's my letter. Oh, we got cats. You're playing to the internet.
This is cool.
Yeah.
It almost looks like it's raining or something. Oh,
It's raining cats.
It's raining cats. Okay, let's see. So we have like the fog. We have, is that the letter B as well?
I think this is the B right here, yeah.
B,
Because
okay.
it's, I believe, 36 days of typist going on, and we're on the
Okay.
second day. So yesterday was A, today's B.
This is B.
So all of them
Okay.
should be B.
I think maybe my first recommendation is I actually wasn't clear that it was a B. If I didn't know that we were dealing with Bs,
Could be mistaken for an
I would
A.
have, yeah, I would have thinking like an 8 or just like a shape. It doesn't quite register as a B to me for some reason. So maybe
That's
it's
a good point.
like I don't know, maybe playing around with like the edges and things like that to make sure that it's definitely looking like a B. I really, again, I like that you have almost like this like city looking thing in the background and then like a planet with the cats. It's really cool.
I think this is like a motherboard.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, I think this is like where the processor will go. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I think you kind of went a little bit on your own here. Instead of doing the fantasy world, you established an image and went with it, which I like. That's super cool. You kind of decided your own creative flow and built an image using a PC motherboard and cats. And I think this B kind of might play into that binary aspect of like the computer world, but I agree with Paige. It's without knowing that it's 36 days of type, it might be a little hard to establish that this is a letter in the alphabet. But I like where your head's at.
I do too.
Yeah, this is what the
It
challenges
almost
are all
looks
about.
like 3D-ish. The way that the top cat looks like it's popping out at me, which I like a lot, and I think you could even make it pop more. Like if
Yeah.
you created a little bit more of a dark line on the top edge of the cat too, I feel like it would even more so look like 3D. Because you have that dark line on the bottom, like where a shadow would be.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah, and even on the top one.
Oh, this
yeah,
guy
right
right here,
there.
yeah.
Like I feel like it looks like it's kind of like popping out of the planet at me. And yeah,
This is a
I
cool
like it a
addition.
lot.
It looks like they kind of blended this.
Yeah,
with
they
the key.
blended there.
Now, I would love to know, we have to know, is this your cat? Is this a stock kitty or is this
Or
your cat?
did you toss your cat in the air to capture this
Again,
image?
pictures like, all right, toss them up once, click, 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 click.
No, but she was my twin soul.
Oh, that's so funny.
Very good. No, this is awesome. Thank you
Cool.
so much.
This is great. Yep, great submission. All right, let's keep moving. All right, here we are. I think this probably is day 2, but we can touch up on it. I actually saw that there was a lot of submissions from when we looked at them, and then this
And
past
then
24
afterwards
hours.
they
So yeah, we
submitted?
can touch up on them.
Okay.
Cool. I like kind of this is one cohesive color palette going on, right? Like this is an image that works well together. It's kind of like when you're doing a composite and then you add that finishing LUT to make it all blend together. I think that's what's playing into right here. Maybe with the clouds do stand out a lot, I'd say, from this.
Yeah, you could darken them a little bit, I think, to make it look more blended. Yeah, I agree. And it almost looks like the clouds look like they have a light source on them
Yeah.
that doesn't match the light source on the foreground and bottom. So it almost looks like light is coming in this way sorry, I have to like backwards
I think we're
things.
flipped. Yeah,
I'm like,
it's super bizarre.
It looks like the light of the foreground and the clouds. It looks like it's coming from opposite directions. So maybe even flipping the clouds or flipping the foreground.
Yeah, it's true.
Might help a little bit there.
Yeah, it looks like the lights are coming in from the pyramid here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so just
other side for.
Yeah, I think just playing with lighting with these composites, you'll start to see when you kind of look at the principles on how the lights should affect certain objects and kind of making sure that that same principle applies to everything in there. You'll start to see that these images really kind of come together as sort of like more believable. And again, this is fantasy, so it doesn't necessarily have to look realistic, but I think these are just good things, especially when starting out,
Yeah.
to kind of follow. Just good practice to kind of build up on.
And I think what makes fantasy feel so real though sometimes is when you do make sure that it follows like
Yeah, like the
general
same real-
general rules of like lighting and things like that.
Yeah, for sure.
You'll find that it makes it look that much more believable.
Yeah.
But I love like the soft hazy colors, the greens, the purples. It looks like there is like some harsh lines of when the colors change. Whether that's intentional or not intentional, I'm not
Right
quite
here?
sure. Like right along like the pyramids, you can see that there's like I'll show you right here. It looks like I can see this green hue.
Oh yeah, good eye.
Right there, and so maybe
Can see
blending that a little bit more so that it doesn't look like there's like a green glow.
It's a great eye. I
Those
didn't
sort
even see
of
that.
blends like will make it look that much more smooth and put together.
Yeah,
So
agreed. Cool, awesome. Thanks for submitting. This is my version of the creative challenge. I think this might play into day 2.
yeah,
Let's get a letter. So
this looks like a painting. I love it.
yeah, it's very very surreal. It's cool. Again, I love how you all are kind of taking this fantasy and really doing your own interpretation of it, right? We encourage you to follow along. If you don't know where to start, follow Claudia's model, but you all are kind of going left field here, and this is great. I mean, it's I think doing stuff like this is really exploring the creative juices you have brewing up in here, and I think the more you kind of really push these boundaries of what you think is real or not is when you really kind of start to define your own look. So I can see some stuff going on here on some sort of look, but yeah, it's cool. I like it.
This one's really great. And this one, I feel like it's a flat image, but it looks intentionally flat. If you wanted to, you could try to like create some dimension where it looks like, because naturally I feel like it's trying to tell me that like
this is kind of further away.
Yeah, this is further
Yeah,
away.
this
These
is a
are
little
closer.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
you can also use lighting and shadows. Like if you were to darken like some of this right here, it would actually start giving it an illusion that that this was like a tunnel type of thing. So anyway, I'm already seeing like some of these lines there, and so you could kind of play with like the lighting and the dark portions of the image if you wanted to make it look more like 3D. Otherwise, I actually don't mind the flat look at all. I think it's also definitely like an artistic choice. It looks good.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, I agree. I think this is great. Good stuff. All right, let's see what else we got. Here we go.
Ooh,
B.
This
I
is
feel like this is just
glam.
fabulous.
Yeah,
it's like
it's fabulous.
like glamping.
Oh my
It's
gosh,
great.
even the
Look at that
animal
cheetah.
is, oh
we
my
gotta- we
gosh.
gotta-
Okay, I don't even like, I'm just not even gonna say anything. I just
This
love
is so
it.
great. I love how this is it a jaguar?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a jaguar.
And the sparkles on everything and the trees. This is great.
This is so great. It's all right. Who submitted this?
Yeah, teach me.
Sig. This is great.
Teach me Photoshop.
Sig, this is great. I think this. I don't have many comments on this. I mean, you
And I'm
painted.
like trying to look for like anything.
Yeah, you
but-
painted a picture here, and I think it works really well together. I mean, you have these little artifacts that go with the glow and sort of the glamour of this image. You have some nice lighting here that kind of, like this is kind of a subtle add to this, but it really does make a difference. I think
it does.
on this whole image.
Well, and y'all know that I'm a sucker for lighting, and look, even the right-hand side of these trees is darkened up a little bit because the light source is coming from over here.
Yeah.
There's like a little bit of shadow here on the jaguar, shadowing on the right-hand side of the letter. So you can see that it made it look more 3D because those shadows are helping your eyes.
these shadows
They're
right
telling
here
you
too. It's all
like
working with it.
where things are and the dimensions of things. So.
Yeah, this was kind of touching up on what we were talking about making, this is fantasy, but it's a lot more believable, so to say, because the principles of lighting and dimension apply, right? And just looking at this, it just looks believable, right? Like we have this bee kind of blended into this ground, right? Like it belongs here. We have this source of light coming here, and these shadows are kind of coming into play here. But yeah, this is a great submission. Good job, Sig.
Yeah, good job, everyone. These are so. I love seeing
everybody's-
like everyone's creative mind, and everyone goes to different places with all of these. Oh my gosh, there's so many. I love this. Okay.
Yeah, okay, let's
This
look
one
at it.
looks like it's a painting as well. These
This
are so
is-
cool.
I wonder if you're in chat, let us know if you made this in Fresco, or did you use the iPad to draw this, or was it Photoshop or Illustrator? But this is great.
Yeah, this one's also so good.
Yeah.
I like this one looks cartoony to me intentionally, which again I think gives you a little bit of room to not play with like the realism that on the last one they were really going for like the realism look, and this one I think doesn't actually need it as much just because it's so cartoony looking. And I think it works pretty well.
Yeah.
And there's no established light source, so there's not as much of a need to like deal with that sort of thing on this one.
Yeah, I like it. I'm not sure if this was intentional. If it is, then disregard this, but it does seem like this owl does stand out quite a bit with the lighting compared to this tiger. So I think even just a simple adjustment of maybe like bringing that lighting down a little bit so the eyes aren't really going straight to this owl. Will kind of help blend this all together, because this tiger, I'm pretty sure it's a tiger. I think Steve corrected us that last one was a leopard. I'm gonna take your word for it. I'm not sure if it was a jaguar or leopard, but I'm pretty sure this one's a tiger.
That one does look like a tiger.
I'm pretty sure it's a tiger, yeah.
Yeah, that is a tiger. Oh, that one's so cool.
But yeah, that's my own take. And this looks like a basketball court, so I'm assuming you have a love for basketball or love watching it, so you can take in your own personal love into these paintings, so really making it unique. It's thumbs up. You guys are doing great. All right, let's keep on going. Here we go. We got a bee and a kitty cat.
I love it.
This is great. Again, I want to know, is this your personal cat?
Yeah, please. Please someone tell us that you used your personal cat for these.
Yeah. This is great. I like what's going on. I'm getting kind of like a 90s, like, Saved by the Bell vibe from this.
It's, have you seen the music video of John Mayer when he's like, in a purple suit? And anyways, it reminds me of that. If anyone's seen it, it's like, he does some really funny music videos that have like a 90s feel.
That's
and
awesome.
It's like,
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, they use like green screens and stuff, and it's like intentionally wrong, and this one to me looks like intentionally wrong. And it looks good.
I think what sells it is just like this cat's face, and then you have like a pink glow.
Yeah, it's like you exaggerated what's like not working in the image to make it look like it's on purpose, or because it was on purpose. Yeah. And that's totally a look. Like when you're
totally a look, yeah.
Yeah,
totally.
And I think it works.
It's like that kind of meme look, right?
Yeah. Looks good.
I always like to give a little bit of constructive criticism when I can. I think maybe feathering this edge a little bit could kind of help blend the little kitty cat into this a little bit. It just does look like it's a harsh composite into this, but even if you kind of have a feather that goes with this pink glow, I think it'll like kind of give it that halo effect, make the cat pop out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
Same feedback with the cloud maybe too, even.
Yeah, it does look like it was feathered a little bit here.
Down there it was.
But it does look like kind of like a harsh edge. So, have that blend a little bit more into the scene. And I think it'll just kind of make all this play together nicely. Cool. Okay, finally feel good about this piece. I call it Bast and Her Followers.
Ooh.
Oh, this is cute.
I like the silhouetted cat
on
the
check
left.
this out. Yeah, I didn't see this.
That's so cool.
This is great. This is something unique that I haven't seen.
Yeah, I haven't seen that either.
Yeah.
I really like that. And I love the planet thing.
Yeah.
I'm all about it makes it feel super surreal when you have the big planets that you can see that look like they're so close to you. I love that.
This is obviously our moon. I wonder if this is another side of it or just a totally different moon.
Yeah,
but it's pretty cool. Yep. Great stuff here as well. Same thing we've been talking about. I think if you're looking for some feedback in terms of how to make this image all play together, is there are kind of harsh, the lighting here is pretty bright, and then the lighting here also looks like it's not playing together nicely with these clouds. So maybe kind of use an adjustment layer to kind of have all these have the same lighting across. So
yeah,
maybe this is also a little bit further into the scene. So I forget what the term of it is, but the further you look out to a landscape, it's like atmosphere haze or something like that.
It can get hazy.
It can get hazy and kind of look a little less sharp. Yeah, kind of like the blacks are pushed up a little faded. So maybe since this is what seems like pretty much further away, we can kind of make this a little bit darker, a little bit hazier. So it looks like we do have some depth coming into this.
Yeah, and clouds are really tough to blend. You can see, right here, the first thing I notice when I'm looking at these is I can see this really sharp edge here. And then as soon as we get here, I can tell that we were trying to blend it. Whereas you might want to try to go sharply along the lines of the cloud shape. So it looks like it has a similar end as the ones over here, or these ones can maybe be more blended to match this portion of it. You can tell that something different's going on there, just because you had to blend it here, obviously, and it's really tough to blend it nicely. So trying to either like match this blending to this or vice versa, I think will help a lot there. So
Great. I think, yeah, Gianna coined this correctly, the theme. It's Catterday.
Catterday.
Yeah, it's B, letter B in Catterday.
Yeah,
And he thinks this is
really-
Mercury, which
Okay.
I'll take your word for that as well.
I really love the cow on the side. I love the
Yeah, this is
idea
great.
of that.
This is a
That's
great
really
original
cool.
idea. I'm digging it.
Yeah.
Cool. We have about 5 minutes left, so let's power through a few more of these. Check this out.
Ooh, I'm a fan.
I am a fan. Yeah, this is I'm just loving all the different interpretations of this challenge. This is
Yeah,
so
this
great.
one's great. Look at that.
Yeah.
You blended like the cat eyes, face, and stars and everything really well.
Yeah, this
it looks
this is
very
blended
believable.
really, really well, this scene right here.
Yeah, it looks so
The
believable.
cat with the galaxies and got a little extra sparkle too by the eyes here. I think where there's a lot going on. This is great. Do you have any comments on?
Go maybe zoom in a little bit. I'm trying to think. Same thing. It's like you can kind of see that there's like a line right here that looks like it's maybe something weird's happening. Maybe
Oh yeah, it's kind
you
of.
could
It
make
looks like
it
just
thicker.
opacity.
Yeah, you could make it thicker on the bottom of this maybe and make it like slowly get lighter. The blending out here looks pretty good.
Yeah, that was actually done really well.
Yeah, same with this blending. Yeah, you did really good on the blending. Like this is very nitpicky. There's just like a little bit of like haze and clouds aren't even, right? And so sometimes it's so hard to make it look real. And unfortunately, a lot of times you can't just like, I mean, I was dealing it with the sky replacement, right? Like it's so hard because you can't just like swipe it away and make sure and like think that like, you know, putting it at 50% opacity is gonna look real. Like you really have to go in and actually like brush certain areas of it, which is tough. So
Cool. All right, let's see if we can do maybe 2 or 3 more. We're just kind of going up and down the list here. Cool. This is
gorgeous. Again, this
great.
painting look. I'm seeing that from a lot of people. It looks like paintings, and I love it.
Yeah, this is great. It does have that painting look. You definitely painted a scene here that I think works really well together. We're going to do lightning round feedback real quick. Right here, I do see some harsh edges on here. So maybe if we're going with this painter kind of surrealistic, dreamy vibe, kind of like what you did here, like it just kind of looks like the edges kind of blur together. So maybe do a little bit of that here.
Yeah, and my feedback would be somewhat similar. Like you can see that this looks like it's bled on top of another image, and if that's like what you're going for, then totally fine. But you could, if you want the image to look like it's like bleeding into this, then you could try to like blur some of the, like one of the sides of the pyramids into this image or something like that, so that it's not as drastically different.
Yeah. All right, cool. Let's check this one out. Nice. I like what's going on
Yes.
here. I like this background choice right here with the little shooting star going for. That's great. And then of course we have the puma. I think that's a puma.
The jaguar.
The jaguar. Oh man, I'm just butchering all these different cat names.
He's like this dog over here.
This cow that's just sitting right here. It's kind of crazy.
Yes. Okay, let's see for this one. No, look there. I mean, I like that the trees match the lighting of the pyramids, so good job on that. I do think that even on the, like, you could try to show like a little bit more of a light source coming in from the right hand side of the, or left hand.
I think it would play nicely
whatever side
too
of the
with this
image.
shooting star as well, right? It seems like there's kind of this visual light coming through here, so
Yeah, like
that'd
what
be
if
kinda
there
nice,
was
like blending.
Yeah, like what light is hitting those pyramids? Like you just have to ask yourself those types of questions, like
Yeah.
to try to make it look a little bit more
Okay,
realistic.
let's do one more. I'm gonna pick this one. This is a great use of the mirror effect. I think.
yeah?
I think these are glasses and sunglasses, and I love how you took a simple picture that's just literally glasses and sunglasses, and then you made an image out of it as kind of like this base of this fantasy world, right? So yeah, I think this is some great idea flowing in here.
Yeah, I feel like this has like some hidden meaning of like
I know.
of like, you know, us destroying the earth with all of our plastic or
it's
something.
reinterpreted a lot.
And then the trees growing on top of it. I'm so curious to hear what everyone was thinking as they created all these.
Awesome. I want to do one more. We have 1 minute left. This is great. I'm getting a painting
so cool.
vibe to it. You put a lot of effort into this. You have kind of like the aurora, like northern lights bleeding to it.
Yeah.
And
So
kind of see what
cool.
they did here is they kind of added the light to it, so it kind of like goes into it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really gorgeous. Even like the way that this worked well is because you have your light source is the aurora. What are those
Aurora
called?
borealis.
The northern lights, and it's shining both directions onto those planets. So good call
Oh,
on
look
that.
at that. And then they added the beat to it to play with
Oh.
today's challenge.
Yes,
Kind of have
yes.
like the Infinity War.
And I like that. Yeah, like the
this
little
This came out
things.
great.
Yeah, these are
Awesome.
really good.
I love this. Yeah, great job, Sean. All right,
Okay.
cool. I think that is all the time that we have today. I want to thank you all for coming out here and chatting with us and learning photography, compositing, go over and design feedback. It's been an awesome past 2 days. Paige, you've been wonderful showing us
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for
your
having
tips, your Lightroom expertise, your Photoshop skills. So it's been great. All right, everybody, stick around because we have a lot more coming up today. We have the XD Daily Creative Challenge with Jesse Showalter, and then we'll have more of Claudie doing logo design to finish up her design with Christine Arth. All right, everybody, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in a little bit. Bye-bye.
me. Bye.